Can you believe it? The 52nd episode of Wayne's World. And Kelly, take it away, Wayne.
Hey everybody, appreciate you, Kelly. Got a good guest today. My buddy Dan Jost. Dan is a entrepreneur and has a very successful business up in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area called Man Cave Barbers. And we're going to discuss his transition from being an executive with a Fortune 500 company to actually going into what he really wants to do as far as starting his own business very successfully as a barber. Welcome, Dan. How are you?
Hey, good morning.
So take it away, brother. Why don't you give us a little background? I met you way back in 1998, and you began your career pretty quickly and moved around other parts of the world, the country. Why don't you tell us how it all kind of started?
Okay, well, out of school, out of college, thought I was going to be a doctor, went through the paces of that. I didn't do well on the entrance exam or as well as I was told I should do. So my plan was get a job, keep studying, take additional courses, and then retake the test and eventually get into medical school. And during that year-long period of taking night courses and doing a couple of jobs, one of my coworkers at one of the jobs in the retail industry had moved over to this Fortune 500 company Tony's mentioned. Called me a week after he left and said, "You got to get over here. I know you're going in a different direction, but if you want to make some better money, you should be over here." And so I went and interviewed and got an entry-level position. At that company, it was, as Tony can attest, because we were both there around the same time early on, it's kind of like a stock market trading floor, right? It was 50
Yes,
dudes in a cubicle city where the cubicle walls were only as high as your face when you were sitting down. So you heard every conversation on the floor. Guys were working together to get things done in the logistics, this is in supply chain area, and tempers flew, but we also had a lot of laughs, and there was just a lot of constant energy in the room, and the money was a lot better than I had been making working 2 part-time jobs, right? So once I kind of got ingratiated to that culture, it reminded me a lot of all my sports experiences in college and high school, which is, like kind of the team atmosphere, the locker room kind of atmosphere. I just kind of stopped the pursuit of the medical school thing. And so and I just kind of, at that point, not really having any other thoughts in my head about what else I wanted to do in life, I was happy to sacrifice a lot of hours. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have a house. I didn't have kids. I didn't have any other responsibilities. And so working, 40, 50, 60-hour weeks, working Saturday mornings, late night on Friday nights when I would otherwise be at the bar or whatever in my young 20s was no problem. And the company's name, which I have no ill will towards, but they were good at paying you more for more sacrifice and performing, right? Which is an easy model to understand as a young 20-year-old guy, is like, if I bust my butt and I produce results, I get paid more. And so I just kind of fell in love with that. And then I was like, how high can I get in this company? How much can I control and manage? How much of my own ideas can I implement into what I do every day or what people do around me? And can I do something that makes other people's jobs easier or makes them more successful? And so I just kind of started searching out those opportunities within the company. And, 22 years later, I had a change of heart. And that was, so I started in 97, and 2019 was my last. I left the company mid-year 2019. That's when I started the second journey, I guess.
Well, Dan, before we can move on forward on anything, we have to make a big disclosure here, because you referenced Tony. And actually, I think I've heard this 1 or 2 times before, and I never really paid attention until you said it. Wayne has an alias, and it's Tony what?
Tony Pringle, like
Tony
the chip,
Pringle.
but
Yeah.
To my best knowledge, the Pringle has nothing to do with the well-known snack food. No, one of my early mentors at the company, a guy named Greg Holcomb, had a couple of friends coming over the years, coming in and out of work at Robinson. Some of them stayed, some of them did some time and left. And Wayne was one of those guys. They had known each other at college, and but when he came in, he was introduced as Tony Pringle. At least that's what Greg called him. To the point that I was so sure that was his real name for like 5 years that, I mean, even his company email said Tony.Pringle at, XYZ company rather than Wayne Searson. So everyone just referred to him as Tony. Nobody knew his real name was Wayne for like a decade. I mean, I think he left and people are still referring to him as, hey, Greg, how's Tony doing? Haven't heard from that guy in a while, that kind of thing. Right. So my whole existence with Tony is Tony. Wayne's kind of a weird thing to say to me. So
I worked for a company, golly, it was back in 95, I think, 95, 96. And they wanted us to have aliases at the company. But the company was in Northern Virginia and DC market, which is, where I was from. I go, people know me. I can't all of a sudden have a different name. But yeah. I'm with that company, kind of, without going in too much into it, there's a reason why people had an alias. It was a headhunting firm, and it was, like you said, like a stock brokerage firm, and it was hardcore boiler room recruiting. And, I
thought you were going to say CIA, and you were just going to leave it at that and let me wonder for a while.
That would have been cool. Yeah. Now my brother-in-law, God rest his soul, was a member of the Northwest Federal Credit Union. So for all the people that know the CIA, know why that's their credit union. It's kind of cool. But anyway, okay. Moving right along. So didn't you do some time in Miami?
I did. So the company was organized, it largely been a very individualized company in that it was made up of a plethora of branch locations around the country and through acquisition around the world. And you kind of, the pinnacle of your ladder climbing would be to manage a branch location. Because the executive levels of Robinson, or the company, of Robinson at the time, were very small, right? They had only 3 or 4 vice presidents, a couple divisions, HR, marketing, IT departments were all very small, but we had at the time maybe 9,000 to 10,000 employees. Wow. So a lot of worker bees, right? And I don't say that disparagingly, but I mean, people were driving revenue at individual locations. The model was pretty straightforward. You didn't need a lot of oversight. You didn't need a manager over a manager over a manager. And a lot of people like that. I love that structure. As we started to grow and we had gone public, the first year that I was there, we were operating on a model that was almost 100 years old. And we went public within a year of my arrival, no coincidence. And they started to become more corporate, right? That was kind of the start of we probably should have a few more HR people, a few more policies. We should have some oversight in these areas that we've had blind spots in. And it created some vertical climbing ability, right? Suddenly the cap wasn't a branch manager position, and the office that Tony and I worked at was at their corporate headquarters. It was operating as an independent branch, but was under the same roof as the corporate offices. So we had a lot of access to executives that other people didn't have, which is probably beneficial for people who were eager to move forward. But our office was one of the biggest and most successful in the company. We had some of the bigger accounts in the country, and within the branch, it was limited growth, right? Because the person who was there was doing a killer job, leading the charge, and so I had to start looking outside of not only the branch but the division. And one of the opportunities that came up after a couple of trial and errors, chasing promotions, was a branch or a region in Southeast United States that was kind of failing a little bit. They had some avant-garde models that the company itself hadn't used before. They were kind of figuring things out on their own because they were dealing with a lot of international business. And so for me, that sounded really exciting, because I kind of had an ASMR type liking to fixing problems, right? Even just cutting my lawn and going from rough to clean and square and everything is like satisfying. So the idea of walking into a place that's a little bit troubled and hopefully fixing the leaky pipes and making it all work smooth was exciting, but then also dealing in an area that nobody else in the company was dealing with, right? Which was international trade, import and export. Art Vandelay reference real quick there, Tony. So
Seinfeld.
Nobody else wanted the job, frankly, because this group was kind of so far outside the boundary. So one of the vice presidents set me up to go down and work there for 6 months. They let go of the existing general manager. I was a fill-in. I went down every week right after I got married with a child on the way. And I spent a week down there at a time, would fly back on the weekend, fly back the next week, and just kind of run business as if I had responsibility for the entire, thing. And we're about 4 months in, and I just said to this particular VP, I said, I can't keep doing this. I have a kid I just had a kid, starting a marriage life and all the other things. I either move me down there or don't, give me the actual job or don't. And about a week later, he came back and said, you got the job. So there wasn't an interview process for that. I was kind of chasing a broken down business, and I think they were happy that somebody was happy to go take it. So did 6 years down there, got the ship mostly righted. There were some inherent problems, some things that the former GM had done and signed on for some stuff, bigger bites than he could chew, so to speak. They made it really hard to climb out of the hole, but I feel like in that time I got us out of the hole, but I also expanded our international business, mostly Caribbean, South America, Central America. I started some trade with Asia, Southeast Asia. This is all perishable product, fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. I was able to actually generate enough business in Puerto Rico and Colombia specifically that I was able to open offices and hire employees, indigenous to the country. So I wasn't sending American citizens down there. I was hiring Colombians in Colombia, and I was hiring Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, and starting supply chains in those countries as an established importer within the country, which the company, we'd done a lot of business as a company internationally in logistics, but we weren't actually taking possession of goods, let alone perishable things that were dying with every hour of, passing since being picked off the vine. So it was a lot of stress, but it was also extremely exciting. And I had a team of about 100 employees altogether across 4 offices or 5 offices, but I had a small group of about 6 or 7 who were extremely high moral fiber, extremely aggressive. Most of these were women, and they were Hispanic. They had all been born in other countries and immigrated to the U.S. with their families, right? And they took like 0 prisoners, right? To hear these ladies on the phone selling and haggling with customers when customers were trying to, pull a wool over their eyes or whatever, was entertaining. It was awesome.
Right.
They always got our money, right? We always got paid. They made good money. So I learned just an absolute ton. My experience in business and everything else, learning how to chase down a lawyer, in Antigua, and get a settlement in a Dutch court because they used the Dutch courts over there rather than an on-island court. I mean, just a world of experiences I never even thought I'd be meddling in, so super exciting. But that was my 6 years in Miami, and the reason we left was the kids, the schools. I'm honestly not a fan of a lot of humidity all the time. 3 shirts on the way to work changing. Who does that, right? So
we do it. Yay!
yeah. So we had fun while we were down there as a family. We started our family there. We went down there with a toddler and an infant. We came back with 3 kids. But it was 100% voluntary. Just wanted to get back. Just wanted to get out of Florida. Was open to other states, but conversations led us back to Minnesota. And I just told the company, hey, I know I can do something. I don't expect to have a peer-to-peer exchange of positions at all. I'm the one that's instigating this. So, and I'll pay for the move and relocation. I assume that's my responsibility based on the fact that I'm kind of resigning within the company from a role. And so my wife actually at the time had been working the whole entire time in Minnesota. She would fly back. She was probably gone about 17 days a month, flying back every week to Minnesota to do her job in the company. And we had met in the company many years before that. And she had kind of risen probably a little faster than I had over that time period. And so she was constantly going back. And this was before COVID, right before work remote type stuff. So it was a lot easier to be in person. All your team people she was overseeing were back in Minnesota. So she just was coming back all the time. And then when she was back at home in Florida, that's when I could do my travel for visiting customers or putting together, leases on warehouses or whatever I had to do. And so that whole lifestyle was just strenuous. And it was like, the schools are not good, but they're not terrible, right? There's not like there's oil cans with fires burning in them as you walk up to the school, and or anything war zone like. But
like Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, right.
Yeah,
so,
right.
We said we kind of just told ourselves, look, this will be fine if this is what it is, but if we can do better, we should do better for the kids, right? That was kind of our statement to ourselves. And so, long story short, we made the move back to Minnesota. I took a position. Thankfully, Robinson found a spot for me, and I took a position as a project manager under one of my favorite mentors of all time, Jim Dorsey, who no longer works at the company. He's moved on as well, but just the most encouraging, positive person within Robinson Walls that I've been around consistently, right? It wasn't one day you're awesome, next day you're terrible. It was consistent, and it was never your fault, right? It's almost like a parenting moment. Things that went wrong were never your fault. They were a learning lesson. They were maybe you could have did something better rather than saying this is where you screwed up, right? So spending a year under his tutelage, basically it was a holding pattern, waiting for them to find something for me to do that was more long lasting. And in that time, an opportunity came up with a company out of Scotland who was trying to introduce their proprietary products into the US. And we were going to be their marketing arm across all of North America. And so I took that on and led that partnership, both marketing and customer interaction and overall operations in the US. And then they managed the product supply into the US, which was seed. And then we had to grow it because the US doesn't allow importation of their product type. So we had to grow it here and then sell it. And I did that up until the end. And that's kind of what led into my choice of work career change.
Yeah,
so tell us about that big
career
change.
Yeah.
I know
Okay.
Tony didn't inspire it. Wayne Serson definitely did not inspire you.
I said, I know this guy who climbs on roofs in Craptown, Florida all day long, and I think he makes at least $10 a day. I got to get some of that action. So
you're not going to make any money cutting that guy's hair.
Right. Well, since I'm Tony Pringle, maybe that guy's name is Wayne Serson. I heard. I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
But dude, the empire. I know you're going to expand in the not too distant future. But what you have built, I was telling Kelly, there's a wait list for like half a dozen employees that you have just to walk in your door. I mean, it's like another world. Tell us a little bit about that.
About the barbershop specifically?
Yeah. Well, just what you're doing, dude. Yeah, it's just fun.
Yeah, so it started as a 4-chair shop, and I wanted it to be in the town that I live in, Chanhassen, because I didn't want a long commute, frankly, and I didn't really care that much about where's the ideal market and all the gaming strategy that goes into just picking a spot. I just said, look, I'm going to make this work here because it's close and it gives me more time with the kids, or if nothing else, to be a taxi for the kids for all the stuff they're doing and just be present, be around and be in a community that I like. And I have friends in various circles, whether it's youth football or it's youth basketball or whatever. So found a spot last minute. Had been searching for months to find some spot that I could afford and that wasn't too big, because in this area, this neck of the woods, everything is too big, right? Everything is 2,000 square feet or more. That's just a lot. So this one just kind of fell in my lap. And I said, I'm going to do 4 chairs. And in barber world, right, this is a whole world I've gotten into that I had no knowledge of before I got here. But we talk in terms of chairs, right? So how many chair shop do you have? Well, I have a 2-chair shop, a 1-chair shop, a 4-chair shop. We're not talking about the waiting area. We're talking about active barbers on the floor, right? And this is not, it was important to me that it's not be considered a salon. I've had a couple of funny arguments with moms who said, yeah, we've been to other salons, but Tommy likes your salon the best. I'm like, did you call it a salon? Because there's barbers and there's cosmetologists. Those are two licenses that are available if you want to cut hair in the country, right? And barbers are very proud that we're not cosmetologists. And there's a few subtle differences, but both people can cut hair, can cut men's hair, kids' hair, women's hair, all that kind of stuff. So that doesn't matter. But 4-chair shop, I said, I'm going to start it by myself. If I have to be the only barber there, that's fine. But at least somebody I know for sure, because I have taken the coursework and gotten certified. I know that somebody can cut hair. I'm not relying on somebody out of the gate. So at that time, one of my friends from barber school had been working he had graduated a couple months ahead of me, because in the barber school, you kind of start whenever you want to start, and you just have to get through 9 months, and they kind of repeat curriculum. So whenever you start during a calendar year, you're going to cover all the material by the time you're done, right? And so he was out a couple of months ahead of me. He had been working at a different barbershop, had a bad experience with the owner there. He knew that I'd been planning to open a shop. He called up. I said, yeah, let's do this. Come on over. And I was nervous because I was like, what if this thing flops? And I just had this guy come across the Twin Cities to start working in a shop that's dead. But he was actually there from the first day. He helped me demolish the interior, right? I mean, so he was hands-on right away, helping out wherever he could. We got the place up and running in about 2 months after a couple of supply chain delays. And in the first 2 weeks, we just sat there, right? We had a few TVs on. I think we started binge watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, if you know that show. But it was good for a laugh. And
that's got to go in the book.
Yeah, we just sat there and would watch and binge watch that show. And it was the second day. I think the first day, only customers we had the first day were people that knew we were opening that day, right? Friends, and they came in. I am, the whole joke, I'm here for a haircut. Is anybody available? And, just echo through the cavernous room of nobody being there. But the second day, we opened up, we turned on Sunny Philadelphia. We're on season 2 now, season Philadelphia. And this dude walks in, and I honestly didn't know. He's probably like a senior citizen, somewhere 68, 70, something like that. I didn't know what he was there for. And we just both stared at the guy. And he said, can somebody give me a haircut? And it was like both of us just like, oh, crap, that's us. This is a business. We're live. And that's like kind of the first moment that I realized that I'm doing this. Before that, it was kind of almost a game in my head. It was a vision of what I wanted to do, from the physical surroundings of the space, and going through barber school. For some reason, at multiple points, I just never thought it was real. I think I was actually going to be able to make money doing this. And then within a couple of, it started to slowly pick up, and within about a month, we were walking in every day with a full schedule of haircuts for each of us, me and this other guy. But maybe the next day we had a couple openings. So, 3 days out, we had plenty of openings, right? And you saw this progression with each passing week, that not only would today be full when we walked in, but tomorrow would be full. And then the third day out, we'd have a couple of openings. And you'd have to look a week out to see a lot of options on our calendar. When we got to both being booked out all day for a full week in advance, I said it's time to get the third and fourth barber started, right? And we had known a lot of people. So it's kind of a small community. It really, there's only 700 registered certified barbers in the state of Minnesota for over 4 million people, right? So you kind of know who all the other barbers are in a way. And so we reached out to a couple of guys. Actually, the first couple of guys that came in reached out to us and said, hey, I'm kind of passing through. Here's my deal. I could use a chair for 2 months if you'll have me. We knew the guys, knew the personality types. We're like, yeah, absolutely. Come on in. We know it's short term. They came in within a week, they were booked. And then they went on their way like was planned. And we brought in a couple more guys. And, every barber that came in, there was a pattern that started with the timeline of how long it takes them to get to full capacity. And my trigger in my head is, at what point are we turning people away where we just can't fit them in? At least not without disrupting every other customer and that's on the books for the day. And that's kind of the trigger for that. This is the time to expand or hire more barbers or do whatever. And that's kind of how the barber we got to 6 chairs. We have 5 barbers now. I'm going out recruiting to the barber schools because so many classes have graduated that I don't know any of the students anymore. I don't have any connection. The barbers I hired don't have connections to any of the students. So I'm recruiting our 6th, and when we have 6 and we're turning away walk-ins, I'm gonna start building out the 2nd location. So
Yeah,
Nice.
but Dan, anybody can get a haircut anywhere. Well,
Yeah.
exception of probably me. But dude, your place is not a place where you go to get your haircut. It's a place where you go to hang out. When I come and visit you, dude, you know me, I'm there chiming in from the cheap seats about 20 minutes before my appointment, and we're all just laughing. Like everybody in there, dude, is like that. It's the
Yeah.
weirdest thing. God.
yeah, so when I knew I was on the way out from the corporate world, a lot of that, Tony, kind of goes back to what my personal mission statement was and why I'm leaving the corporate world and doing something different. So a lot of that atmosphere is a product of the thought process, I think, that I went through.
Yeah.
And, I said, number one, well, so here's the kicker. When I moved back from Florida, this was step 1 or signal number 1. When I moved from Florida to Minnesota, they brought somebody in to replace me, part of the plan, in the leadership role. And they said, don't go into the office because we don't want employees to keep going to you for problems. We want them to force them to the new guy, right? But we want you active and online so that if the new guy has problems, he can call you around the back end and say, hey, how did you handle this? Or how is this set up or whatever? So they had me work from home with no real responsibilities, which was mind-numbing, right? I've got this little cheapo grandfather clock, I'm looking at it right now, hanging on the wall in the office at home in Florida. And it's like one of those movies you can literally hear the tick-tock, tick-tock echo. I was so bored. I had nothing to do other than be ready for this guy. I wasn't part of any business chain, so I didn't have emails coming in to keep me in the loop on things. I said, I can never work from home. This is before, COVID and the pandemic. But I learned real quick, I can't be a work from home, quiet surroundings guy. I fell in love with the energy that this kind of sales trading floor had created. That constant din, of people on phones and deals being made, and occasionally an explosion with a fight, or a lot of swearing or whatever. So I wanted that environment. So that was signal number 1, or sign number 1. Number 2 was while in Florida, I started going to a barbershop in the town I lived. That was awesome. It was 22 barbers, right? 11 down each wall, with a back-to-back booth running right down the middle. All the barbers there were had come from Boston or Philly or New York, whatever. So you had all the accents. You had a lot of attitude, right? A lot of giving each other crap about whose sports teams suck more. I could sit there all day without getting a haircut and just be entertained. It was so cool to hang out there that my wife didn't mind sitting and waiting because she enjoyed all these conversations. And if you heard somebody say something across the room, you could jump in and say, yeah, that guy did make an amazing catch in that game, whatever it was.
Dude, that's what we do at your shop, man, right? It's
like,
exactly what we do.
This is it. Like, I got to create something that has the energy, right? That has that constant kind of energy. It's social. The surroundings of this particular shop in Florida were, it was all nostalgia of Rat Pack stuff. And the owner was big into antique, model cars from the 20s are made out of tin, right? Just all kinds of weird stuff like that on the walls and the shelves and everything. So it was just a cool place to hang out. And I said, okay, maybe opening a barbershop, right? So then it's a checklist. Do I want to just own one, right? Do I want to buy a franchise? And I started actually going down the road looking at sports clips, and they have you go through this multi-tier process. In the final stages, they fly you to Houston corporate office for the kind of the walkthrough and drinking the Kool-Aid, and we stopped short because the markets available to us were it would have been a 3-hour drive to check on one of my sports clip shops, right, in no man's land, Minnesota. So I said, this is not at all what I wanted. This doesn't give me the energy, and it's a corporate thing. I don't really own it. And so I said, okay, yeah, I want to be in the barbering business. I want that energy. I know for sure that gives me that energy, but do I want to manage that, or do I want to be in there and work as a barber? And I said, how can I possibly manage people and tell them they're doing great or they're doing bad if I'm not actually doing it myself? So I had to become a barber, right? So then how do I do that? What schools are available? What's the certification timeline, the cost, the price, and investment, and all that kind of stuff. And then started on that track. And so through this checklist process that I'm going to do, it's got to have good energy. It's got to have an open floor plan. I got to be in the business. I got to be cutting hair. And I want it to be just a really cool, kick-ass environment. Like you could just, like Tony said, you just come in there and just chill. And we have guys that come in and they come in early, and they just, if they're newer to the shop, they just walk around and look at all the pictures and stuff that we have on the wall. And, you know, you can see them like looking at something and chuckle, or they'll turn their head as they hear some comment on the chair, and they kind of smile or laugh a little bit because they can relate to that story or whatever the guy was saying. And so, you know, I'm not doing this corporate. We didn't really talk about that, but that's the main reason I left Robinson, or the company, was it got so bureaucratic and so lethargic and big. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to make decisions on the fly. I wanted to do what I wanted to do on the walls. I have a certain internal moral, you know, pass gate that things have to check, right? Because I know I got little kids coming in too, so I can't be just horribly, you know, boys club type stuff, right? And you have moms coming in with their kids and all that kind of stuff. But it was like, if I can push the envelope a little bit in the humor department, I'm going to do that. It's got to be self-deprecating, right? The dad culture, we love to make fun of ourselves and poke fun at ourselves, and that's mostly what our humor is about. And a lot of cool nostalgia pieces. And so I had a designer build out the whole thing. She chose the floor tile color and the wall color and all the stuff that I'm terrible at. And she goes, what do you want to put on the walls? Because we had a lot of empty space. I said, I got that, right? Because the month before we opened, we were delayed by one thing, the cabinets behind the barber. Everything else was done, ready to go. And so I had a whole month just sitting home doing nothing. And I got on eBay and I got on all these other art sites, and I had all these ideas over the last 6 months in my head, like, oh, this is a funny scene from this movie. I wonder if I can get a canvas, you know, lithograph of that. Or this is a thing that was inspirational to me growing up. I wonder if I can find something to represent that. I can hang on the wall, put on the shelf, whatever. And I just started buying stuff, man. I was buying online. Packages were piling up in our foyer from all around, you know, UPS, FedEx, independent people sending stuff that I'd purchased. And like 2 days before we opened, I went in with a bunch of like picture hanging hooks and a hammer, and just started like hanging like a crazy person and put stuff, you know, LED lights that look like neon lights over here, and you know, sports jerseys from local high school teams that had donated stuff, and got it all set up. And then my wife or somebody, one of my wife's friends, made a comment kind of like, it's like all man stuff in here. I'm like, well, it is the Man Cave Barber.
Right.
And yeah, and she goes, well, don't you feel like you're gonna push some women away? I'm like, no, I mean, if they feel that way, then that's their thing, that's their problem. But everyone's welcome to come in here, and generally everyone has loved the atmosphere and the environment. So that was important. It has to be like a hangout space, which is why I felt empowered with the Man Cave name, because most guys refer to that as their basement getaway. You know, they got some sports pictures up, they're watching a game on TV, having a beer or whatever. And I wanted that environment, you know, and set out to create that. I think, to Tony's point, that is a lot of the draw, and a lot of people coming there. And I'll tell you, we're not going to sit here and say that we're like world famous barbers that should be posting. I hope none of my barbers are posting, because I hate that social media crap in that regard. Posting pictures of haircuts and stuff. But the haircut should be good, right? It's got to be, it can't just be average, or because people can go to Great Clips and cost cutters, get their hair cut off their head. So it has to be that, but it has to be a good experience. So real quick, the other thing that we said we're going to do is we're going to employ all the things we learned in barber school. I think you go to a lot of barbershops to get your hair cut. Maybe they blow the hair off your shoulders and head with a hair dryer, and they pull the cape off and send you on your way. And then you itch in the car and whatever else. And we learned a lot of stuff in barber school. We were taught at this particular school by a woman who had been in the industry since, they call her the first lady of barbering in Minnesota, because she was one of the first females to be in the industry. And she was, you know, doing it back when the Minneapolis Athletic Club, she was cutting Carl Polad's hair because he was, you know, these guys were these lawyers and bankers, and everybody would come into there and get their hair cut at the club. So all the formalities, your hand gestures, how you interact with a customer. You know, it wasn't important just to comb through the hair. You had to comb through the hair this way because it was more comfortable to the customer and it got the job done faster for you. All these little nuances to barbering that was beyond just measure the hair and cut, right? Which includes in our shop, everybody who comes in there, we finish it once the cut's approved by the customer, we wrap their head in a hot steam towel, right? So you get that kind of soothing, relaxing. Different barbers do little things in between there. I kind of do a quick kind of scalp massage through the towel. The guy next to me, the original second barber, does like a full-on head scrub, right? And I had a guy for a while, barber, who would do like these thumb massages on the neck. But the customers loved it, right? It's not going to be mandatory protocol, but everybody gets a slightly different experience in each chair, but everyone gets a hot towel. And then with all the hot towels on there, we do a hot lather, straight razor neck shave, right? We clean you all up there, put a little astringent on the neck, and we finish with a mechanical shoulder rub. And if you've been to a Sports Clips, and I think there's another men's salon, they can call themselves high-end salon, but they finish with this little handheld, what's that horrible catalog on airlines that sells all that?
Sharper Image.
Sharper Image.
That's
It's like a Sharper Image handheld mouse, right? And they're just like in your shoulders for 3 seconds. They're like, wasn't that great? We have like a DeWalt sander. It's a two-handed power tool. Take the sandpaper off, right? Tony's had it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This thing will, as
220
one of my says, that'll shake loose the gum that you swallowed in 5th grade, right? I mean, it's just all your muscles kind of turn to butter. And we do that thing for, 2-3 minutes, up and down all over, whatever. Guys love that. Our most positive reviews always end with love the massage, love the hot towel, love the neck shave. The little extra services that you don't get, even most barbershops have shied away from using straight edge razors and things like that. So any barber that's coming in, especially if I know they're from the school that I went to, I know they're learning this stuff. And I tell them up front, we're going to do that. We're going to use that. So be ready to shave, be ready to do the hot towel and do all these other things. And it's a great way to finish the cut. You walk out feeling clean. And I think that's a large part. I think, honestly, there's a couple barbers we've had and have that are really incredible barbers. Like I send the toughest haircuts their way. They have some of the most loyal fans within the barber shop because they are excellent barbers. But honestly, myself included, the rest of us, we're average. We'll give you a above average haircut, a great experience. And, if you're going to do that every month or you're going to go to a Great Clips every month, it feels like it's an easy choice. So back to your original question, Tony, how do we get there? And I think it's that culture. I think it's the extra services and extra touch that we do. And then the banter, right? We just got back a guy. I don't know if he was there, Tony, when you came. Do you remember the guy we nicknamed Philly? Andrew,
Yep.
Big guy who was at the end of the row. Just loudmouth bowl of soup all day long, right? And he's got a filter when he needs to have a filter, but he has you laughing all the time, and it's a self-deprecating humor that he uses. He's mostly ripping on himself, but it is just hilarious, right? Some days I'm crying. I'm laughing so hard while I'm cutting hair because of the conversation he's having with his customer down there, right? And I think that's what the barbershop experience should be, and what it should have always. Main Street barbers is people are talking about the local sports teams and local things that affect them there. They're learning stuff they didn't know. We're laughing. That's where you want to be till you retire. So now I just got to get some prosthetic legs because my feet are turning to mush standing all day. But
I got
gotta
full
tell you.
disclosure. My grandfather owned Coon's Barbershop in Woodstock, Illinois, back at the turn of the century, Fred Coon. And then my Uncle Gene took it over for 40, 50 years after that. But I have a question.
yeah,
Did you ever read the book E-Myth Revisited?
no.
Oh, no. That's the wrong book. It's called
What the hell?
Raving Fans. The book
Raving
called
Fan?
Fans.
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, because I thought maybe it inspired you to do what you do, but now you have to pick it up and read it. But part of the story is talking about a guy going to the author going to the barbershop. And at first it was all this great service. And then the second one was a really good experience. And the longer he gave them his loyal business, the less the experience went away because they didn't make it their culture. They made it their sales pitch to get people coming in. And then the guy, of course, says, if you want a raving fan, you got to do that hot towel and that razor cut, which doesn't that take a special license to use a straight razor?
That's the barber license. So yeah,
No.
cosmetology,
Okay.
one of the key differentiators, both licenses are 90% the same. Cosmetologists can't use a straight razor. Now, can they physically pick one up and use it on you? Yes. But if they get caught, they lose their license, and the fines are pretty crazy, as most government fines are, for doing that. So, but most of the barbers around me, I like checked out all the competition. Once I said Chanhassen, then I did some diligence just to see what I'm up against. There's maybe 7 shops within a 10-mile radius with actual barbers, and most of them are over 60 years old. So they're not, they're just not going to do this.
Is that old?
Oh, well, for a demographic within this barbering world, most of the barbers are either over 50, 55, or they're under 30. Now, if the guy was a doctor at 60 and he's my competition, I'd be concerned. But if you stand on your feet all day long, 60 years old becomes a problem.
I bet,
right?
yeah.
And to that point, most of the barbers who are of that age in my area, their hours are really condensed, right? They're open from noon to 4 every day.
Right.
They're not looking for new customers. They have a set clientele. They've built their schedule around it, and then otherwise the shop is closed. It's closes early in the day. It's not open on weekends. And even if you do go in there, they aren't using straight razors because it's a hassle. That's some extra equipment they have to have. It helps to have a sink. A lot of barbershops don't have sinks now. It's because they don't plan or intend on using the straight razor. Honest to God, one of our fastest growing services we provide is a beard trim, right? And most shops you can go in, if you kind of talk them into, they'll do a beard trim with a clipper, and they kind of knock it down, shorten it a little bit. But when we get done with that at our shop, we lean you back in the chair, we do a hot towel on your face, we do a kind of a facial scrub just to kind of clean up everything, hot lather, and then we straight edge razor the cheeks and the neck area. Everywhere that your beard or goatee or mustache isn't, we clean it up with a razor. So even if full shaves are a bit of an antiquated notion, people are still getting a straight razor experience on their face if they come in for a beard trim. And
right.
It's about 2-to-1 haircuts to beard trim. We have so many beard trim customers, it's ridiculous, right? And nobody else will do it. So that is a big draw as well. But that's what used to happen in shops all the time, because a true straight edge razor is very difficult to use on yourself. Ergonomically, it's not designed for that, which is why Gillette made millions by introducing the safety razor, because they changed the ergonomics. So we have guys that are like, yeah, I've been meaning to get a straight razor and teach myself how to do that. And we'll say, stop, don't do it. You'll get more nicks and cuts. And because of the way you're holding it on yourself, the shave won't be as clean as a safety. Go with the safety. If you want to go old school, go safety razor with the double-sided blade and the screw enclosure top and all that. Then you can feel old school and not hurt yourself.
Right.
Which is the same reason we don't use those kind of razors as a barber on a customer, because ergonomically it's not easy for us to use a Bic on somebody. It's easier to use a straight razor, but I digress.
I love your passion.
Well, bro,
I mean, that's your passion.
No, go ahead.
Brings your successful career you've had with everything. I bet your kids are amazing too. Just a guess.
They're terrible. They're worthless. I got 3, boy, girl, boy, 15, 13, and 10. All of them are moving up. Their birthdays are all in the next 6 weeks collectively. They'll work in the shop occasionally. There's not a lot for them to do. We don't have a receptionist. And so they sweep hair. I pay them below minimum wage. It's off the books. But yeah, they're great. And you know what? It's
if you pay them on the books, it's a write-off, and they don't have to pay taxes. So it's actually
right.
You might want to really visit that.
I realized I thought this would give me more time with the kids because I could control my own schedule. But the reality is I want the business to be successful. So I'm there as much as I can be. And then when I'm done, I used to sit on my butt all day in a corporate setting. Now I'm standing all day. When I get home, if I'm not napping for the first 20 minutes, then I'm useless for the rest of the night. And so that it's been an adjustment in that way, right? I used to have Saturday, Sunday off. Now I have Sunday, Mondays off. That's good and bad. But if I really need to, it's my business. I can not go in for a week. I just have to make sure I get out ahead of it far enough, because thankfully and unfortunately we are very busy, and I'm booked out so far in advance. Like, you can't spring like a last minute Saturday morning something on me. I got to know well in advance that I need that Saturday off, or else I'm canceling like 15 appointments, whatever. I don't want to do that. So
No,
Anyway,
and I appreciate that. I know you got to go to the shop. I got to head to the Orlando airport. Dan, appreciate you coming on. I'm going to be coming back to Minnesota on Saturday, so I will be in to see you next week. And again, thanks for coming on and telling us the successful business that you have. I really
absolutely.
appreciate your
Thanks
time.
for having me on. I appreciate the time.
You made
Definitely.
it fun. Made me think of my grandfather and my uncle. So that's great.
Then there's a victory in there somewhere.
That's right. Everybody have a
right.
great week, and this has been a lot of fun. And we'll see you next week for what? The 53rd episode.
Ciao,
All right, guys.
everybody. See you,
Be
Dan.
well.
See you, Kelly. All right.